Hello, folks. This is Joe from My Geek Scene. I am doing a Skype call with voice actor, ADR scriptwriter Tyson Rinehart, friend of the show. Tyson, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you guys?
Well,
Well, I guess, how are you and how are the people at home who can't respond?
I'm doing fine. I can't speak for them, and nor will I speak for them. It's just never
I
going
think
to
that,
happen. But all right, as I mentioned at the beginning of the intro, you're an ADR scriptwriter, so I would like to talk to you about a recent show that you were involved with, Backstreet Girls Gokudolls,
yeah,
that I found
yeah,
on Netflix, and I watched all of that, and I found that actually pretty hilarious because it reminds me of DMC, Detroit Metal City, because they are both messed up comedies. Uh,
right.
what are your thoughts on the show? Sorry to start off with a generic question, dude, but literally I
Oh, yeah.
haven't heard anyone talk to you about this.
Yeah, no, I think this is the first time it's been brought up. Yeah, I was brought on board. Chris Bevins was working on it. And he directed the show and he wrote part of the show as well. And he realized that the amount of work that he had on his plate was going to be a bit much because he was working on some other projects at the same time. So he brought me on board, and I wrote 5 of the 10 episodes. And when he told me about it, I was like, okay, well, send me my material now because I want to get to work right now. That sounds brilliant. The show is ridiculous. It is, for those who aren't aware, three Yakuza tough guys uh, disappoint their boss and make him lose face. And so in order to reclaim their honor and not get killed, he sends them to Thailand for sex reassignment surgery, and they become idols, Japanese pop idols. And hilarity ensues because they're all a bunch of dudes who never wanted to transition, who were forced to transition, and they are tough guys, and it becomes a lot of farcical elements and just comedy of errors ensue. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, we were a part of the hemorrhoid episode because that one had me dying.
Yeah, yeah. Also, the one where the hemorrhoid episode, that was me. I also really enjoyed the one where they're on the radio show, and he brings up the fact that he has like this one white pube.
Oh yeah, that that was totally messed up.
Yeah, everybody just record scratch, everything stops. Everybody's just like, and that's not what we expected you to say either.
I mean, oddly enough, I was being interviewed for a podcast last night, and I brought one of the questions geared towards me was like what was one of the shows that I watched recently, and actually that was the one that I caught up. I mean, that I brought up because I thought it was pretty funny, and I would recommend it, And I also made note. I also made it a point to mention that because these guys went through the gender reassignment surgery, it's not that the transgender issue was made the butt of the joke. It was just a thing that happened, and then the fact that these were just three idols trying to restrain their yakuza tendencies. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It could be, and a lot of people did take umbrage with the material and the way it went about it. The way that I approached it, it was never about mocking trans people. That's not funny at all. It's about people being put in situations that they don't want to be in and trying and scrambling to fit the profile when it's not who they are at all. There's a lot of comedy inherent in those situations. Yeah, it's ridiculous, and that's just the thing, is you have to recognize it's just ludicrous. It's stupid. It's funny. It's not taking itself seriously in the slightest. And yeah, at no point in the production of it were we of the mind that going through transition in life is something to be poked fun at. That's not where the jokes are for us. The jokes are that a pretty 19-ish-year-old pop idol girl who usually has to talk about liking strawberry cheesecake and rom-coms and stuff is talking about having these bleedy, horrible, pussy hemorrhoids. That's the joke, is the impropriety, the insanity, and yeah, it's really a lot of fun. My favorite, the show made me laugh multiple times as I was watching it, to prepare myself to write the episode. And, I was watching the episodes that I wasn't writing, so I could keep up on what was happening, of course. And what made me laugh out loud more than anything else was it wasn't an episode I wrote. It was the episode where they decided the girls need to bring more hip-hop elements into their performance. And, like, they watched this video of a rapper, and, like, the
I know exactly what you're talking about, dude.
Oh, dude, yeah. The way the boss reacts to seeing the video of the rapper, I had to pause it because I was laughing so hard I couldn't pay attention to what was happening. I was crying. It just made me laugh really, really hard. And again, like I said, that was pretty much every episode. There was always something that made me have to stop and just be like, "Oh man, this is ridiculous." But that was for me the pinnacle of the entire series. And I was slightly saddened that I didn't get to write it, but I knew that Chris or Rachel were going to tag it magnificently.
For sure. Since we're on the subject of comedy, I did want to talk about your. We did talk a little bit about your comedic background before the last time I would like to say partially interview you, because that was the only 3-on-1 interview that I ever did with you, Mono Creole, and Ian Sinclair, which was a lot of fun. But I didn't really get to go into your time with the Ad-Libs, so I definitely would like to discuss that with you.
Yeah, totally.
So I guess talk about your time with the Ad-Libs.
So there was a buddy of mine from high school. One of his jobs that he had in college was working for this improv comedy troupe in Dallas called Ad-Libs. And he was the music guy. He would cue songs for in between scenes. He would play some simple piano stuff for them to make up their own songs. And he got to know these guys and work with them twice a week for a couple of years. And it was a lot of fun. We would get free tickets to come see the shows and go hang out and enjoy ourselves. And it was something that I had grown up checking out, and so I got the chance to go because they needed a sound guy to fill in like my buddy had, and so I went in and started doing that. But I've got a background in acting and such, and I'm somewhat quick-witted and a writer, so I eventually ended up working my way towards the stage and became one of the actors. Funny note, some of the anime community may be aware, there's a couple actors in the anime world that I worked with at Ad-Libs. Lindsay Hale has done some stuff. She and I basically started doing Ad-Libs at the same time. And then Greg Lush had been there and was performing when I was doing the sound booth. But it was a lot of fun. We would get together. We would plot out an hour or two before the show, plot out what games we would play in what order. And who would play them if we had enough people, depending on how many actors we had. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. We would play. One of my favorites was there was a song that we would always sing. It was kind of a country song. Greg would pick up the guitar, and he'd play a little ditty, and then we would each pick somebody out of the audience and sing a little song, 4 bars about this person. And so there's the common classic ways to get information to do that. So there's what's your name, what kind of job do you do, blah blah blah, have you been married, all that normal stuff. But I would always ask out random questions to really help shake it up a little bit, who here owns a boat, random things like that, or has anybody here sunk a boat, and stuff like that. And so that would always be, I would find a random bit of information that they gave me that shouldn't have been in the forefront, and I would make that an aspect of my little song. One of 4 bars would be about this little tiny detail that shouldn't matter. And to me, that's one of the funny aspects. There are several rules of comedy. My favorite rules of comedy are incongruity and denial of expectation. And when appropriately used and not too liberally used, and I'm not talking politically, I'm talking in amounts, repetition is very funny. But it can also get old. But so yeah, I would use these random rules of comedy and random pop culture information that I knew, and I would play these games with my fellow Ad-Libs actors, and We would do that. We would do What You Doing, where we'd have somebody's initials, and we would have to come up with activities based on those initials. So, for my initials, TR, it'd be, hey Tyson, what are you doing? Oh, I'm trimming the rhubarb. And then the next person would have to act out trimming the rhubarb while I would come up and ask them what they were doing, and then they would have to come up with some other activity that was T and R. There's just a whole bunch of fun games. An audience, another great one that I play with. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. Of course, my favorite partner in the Ad-Libs world, who was also in the anime world, was Chris Rager, Mr. Satan. He and I became really good friends from working together, and we actually did a number of improv panels at some cons that we were at, which is something we wouldn't mind doing again if people ever, bring us to the same cons again. But yeah, it's another great one is sound effects, where we bring somebody in from the audience to provide sound effects for all the different things we're doing. So almost always that would end up involving somebody breaking out a chainsaw because chainsaws are funny. And it was always a different show, but we'd always have like certain tricks and tacks that we would return to. And it's always, and like I said, with repetition, if you can make a joke about some guy, having some certain kind of car in the song sketch, which is the second game, then later on in like the fifth game, which is, backwards and forwards, maybe bring it back up again. So that's a recall joke, and that gets a good laugh. And it's, there's a lot of science to comedy, but like when you start breaking it down mathematically, then you kill the comedy inside of it. So it's more about like a anthropological approach as opposed to a more clinical approach, if that makes any sense.
No, I totally understand. I mean, I'm not a comedian myself. I mean, I just enjoy comedy. And oddly enough, like, I've come to the conclusion, like, whenever I can only listen to comedy, like, I guess at home, because I've been to a few live shows, and I've never had any organic laughter come out of me. And at one point, I was questioning whether I was part sociopathic or not, because I've seen a few comedians whose work I enjoyed, like Brian Posehn, Patton Oswalt, and Bill Burr, and I couldn't get a natural laughter to come out, and I don't like doing fake laughter, so that had me convinced partially that I was partially sociopathic. Thankfully, that's not the case, since I started looking into what true sociopathic behaviors are,
Totally. So, but yeah, those are some great comedians that you just mentioned, by the way.
Yeah, because in Michigan, we have this thing called, every year, it's for Gilda's Club, it's called Laugh Fest. So they, in Grand Rapids, do you guys have Laugh Fest down in Texas, too?
I'm not sure. I'm familiar with Gilda's Club.
So they bring in, like, these comedians every year, and obviously it's a big charity fundraiser. But I've got to see some heavy hitters in person. I just couldn't laugh at them. But like if I'll see like a special like on Netflix or an old comedy album and stuff like that, yes, laughter will naturally come out of me. I just don't know why seeing it in person. Maybe I just have high expectations or something.
Yeah, or maybe there's something about the live element that is distracting or provides a different energy than what you feel comfortable with. Who knows?
So why was MTV's The State one of your comedic influences? Because you brought that up the last time we had talked during an interview.
Yeah, The State was a brilliant show. Like, for those who haven't seen it, it was on Netflix a few years ago, so I don't know if it still is. Hunt it down. It's a funny show. Granted, a lot of it is going to be contemporary comedy for the early, mid-'90s, but, a lot of it's still going to stay fresh and funny beyond. But one of the reasons that I became a big fan of The State was it was one of the things that I saw at the age that I started really getting interested in comedy as something that I can do instead of just something to enjoy. When I was 12, I moved overseas with my family to Jakarta, Indonesia. And while I was there, we had a satellite dish at the house we lived in, but it only really got like Asian MTV, which didn't have The State. It was a lot of K-pop and stuff, which I wasn't familiar with at the time. I had Cartoon Network, which was mostly what now is Boomerang, So it was a bunch of old Hanna-Barbera cartoons and stuff. And then I would get some Australian programming. So I saw like Neighbours, which is a cheesy Australian soap opera. So like, but I also saw Whose Line Is It Anyway, which also, sparked an interest in me because I ended up doing improv very much the same way that Whose Line Is It Anyway does. But a friend of mine over in Indonesia had a VHS tape with a bunch of episodes of The State on it that somebody had recorded in America and shipped over to him. And so we would watch it as we were like crashing at each other's houses and stuff and playing video games. That would be one of the things we do, is we'd watch The State. And The State was just like, it was doing stuff that I hadn't really seen before. I'd watched Monty Python, which Monty Python is like the bedrock of sketch comedy. So like, get hip to it if you're not already. It's brilliant. But Monty Python was in the 60s and 70s, the TV show. And so like a lot of the issues and a lot of the societal norms had already changed over 20 years. To be in the early 90s when The State was hitting. And so there were things that you could talk about on The State and situations you could bring up on The State that you couldn't have talked about on Monty Python. And so, there was the, was it Doug? I think gosh, I can't remember right now. The I'm out of here. Like that was
exactly
Walter. His like whiny teenager character.
What about Louie?
Who?
Louie?
I'm
gonna dip my balls in it.
My balls in it. Yeah, and there was a one of my favorite, which is, it's not really politically correct, and this was when politically correct was starting to happen. So this was kind of perhaps a rally against that for certain aspects. But was the episode where the like Italian restaurant is waiting for the Pope to come visit, and they just keep having like all these like mishaps and everything, but they're so just like vaudevillianly like Italian, like so stereotypically like it can't even be real. Like it was just ridiculous. And then, of course, they take it to the extremes. They give you the incongruity where, like, at first they spill, like, some red wine on the white tablecloth. And they're like, oh, no, we can't have this for the Pope, yada, yada, yada. And, and then it just gets increasingly, all of a sudden somebody's bringing in a vat of crude oil and it's spilling everywhere. It's like, where did the crude oil come from? Like, you're an Italian restaurant. Like, I understand marinara, I understand red wine. There's a lot of things you can spill, and that's part of what makes it so funny is you hit that rule of thirds, and you hit them with something they're not expecting. And so all of a sudden, crude oil, the stuff that comes out of oil derricks, is what's for dinner.
Oh, for sure. I mean, one of the skits, and I was able to find out on YouTube, was it was supposed to be set up like what is the name of that cuddly bear for like laundry detergent? I mean laundry softener and stuff. Snuggles. So yes, like the I think her name was Carrie, the actress, and she was like do you know the skit I'm talking about?
Not off the top of my head.
So she's basically, it's like a commercial, and she's like ironing out a shirt and stuff like that. And she's talking about fluffy soft, and all of a sudden the bear just comes up and starts talking next to her. And then she looks at the bear, starts freaking out, and starts beating it with with her iron because like obviously anamorphic talking animal right next to you, surprisingly, kind of catches you off guard.
Right. Yeah, that might not sit well with some people.
So, I mean, yes, I was fortunate enough to grow up when The State was like first airing before we had all the DVDs and stuff like that, because like we talked the last time, it's The State has been released on DVD, but it's pretty much been neutered due to the fact that all the copyright issues, and they can't release all the music, which was a pivotal point of that whole show. Well, an element, should I say.
Well, it's a lot like Beavis and Butthead, very much from the same time period. You can get DVDs now of Beavis and Butthead, but it's all going to be the episodic aspects. So it's going to be like Frog Baseball and them, doing the guy who ended up becoming the who was the template for Hank Hill from King of the Hill, doing his yard or whatever. Instead, what we watched for in 1992 or whatever, we watched for them watching music videos and making fun of it, like Mystery Science Theater.
Oh, for
and
sure.
that, because of licensing issues, isn't available, and that's the true shame. Because I just remember like Motorhead. One of the first times I'd ever seen Motorhead was on Beavis and Butthead, and they were just like, Lemmy's got Cocoa Puffs on his face.
No, fortunately, like thanks to YouTube, and some folks recording it back in the day, they've actually released a few of those on YouTube and stuff. So I've gone down the rabbit hole trying to find just Beavis and Butthead skewering videos and stuff. Cause that was like one of my favorite sections of that show from back in the day.
Yeah, dude, that was, in my opinion, the best part of the show. The rest of the show was great, but that was where like true genius could be found.
Oh, for sure. But I guess that's a good segue into the next subject. I definitely wanted to talk to you about music. Quick question for you, because from what I understand, you like video games and stuff like that. And,
yes, sir.
Do you like cover bands?
It depends on the band they're covering. And also, I feel that there needs to be like recognized. There's a difference between a cover band and a tribute band.
You mean for like video game music?
Oh, okay, yeah, covering video game music. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's what I was. Oh, sorry, I didn't clarify that enough. That's my fault. So have you checked out video game cover bands and stuff?
Oh yeah, some.
Are there any particular ones that you like?
There's the mini bosses.
Okay, for sure. Because are you familiar with MagFest?
I am, yes.
Dude, I went to that for the first time like last year, and then I went this year, and it blew my mind both times. And like it's an awesome music festival, and I love video game music so much, and I like the cover bands from it. But definitely, like, I know you're busy, but like you being a fellow appreciator of music, I think MagFest would definitely be a convention that would be right up your alley, since it's a music festival first and foremost.
Yeah, totally.
But actually, so favorite songs or albums by Sleep?
Oh man, Dope Smoker is just such a journey. Like it's such an undertaking that it has to be one of those things that I go for the most. Also, it's something that I like to put on in the background while I'm playing Elite Dangerous. That is fantastic music for flying around space and exploring, nebulae. But yeah, the fact that you've got an hour and 5 minute song is just, it's something that's, I don't know if it's unprecedented. It is in my world. I come from most of my experiences from the punk world. So if you're going to 3 minutes, it's already a long song. And then to have this hour and 5 minutes of like pushing you forward, and like there's something about that song and the album cover. It like just creates this like Frank Herbert's Dune like meets heavy metal, the animation, this dream world in my head. And I created a character in Star Wars Edge of the Empire, the Fantasy Flight role-playing game. I created a character based entirely on the cover art and the song. Like there's just something that's very, very inspirational about it to me. Like I don't know what it is, and there's that just drone just keeps it rocking. I got to see Sleep a few months ago. I guess that was several months ago now. I guess that was October. Anyways, it was back in the day. I saw them a few months ago, and it was an almost spiritual experience. It was fantastic, and Al Cisneros, his work is phenomenal. As much as I like Sleep, I'm even a bigger fan of Ohm, which is
I'm familiar with Ohm.
Yeah. Ohm it hits on all cylinders with me. It's got that meditative aspect. It's got the philosophical. The Advaitic Songs is one of the greatest albums ever made. There's so much like world music infused into this like doom metal mixed with, like treatises on like Buddhist thought. And it's fantastic, man. Like, it's really interesting stuff. And again, like I said, part of what really is so appealing to me is that it's so unlike everything else I normally listen to. Because most of the stuff I'm listening to is a lot more pedal to the metal, four on the floor, let's do this, like Motorhead, punk rock, like Death Clock, like a lot more in your face, like high energy. And it's not that the energy isn't high, and well, it is high energy for sleeping home. But it's a much more subdued, paced approach where you get this swelling into a crest, and it's fantastic. Really, really, really cool stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, are you familiar with like Eagle Twin or Burning Witch?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay, I mean, because two of those bands were off of like one of my favorite record labels, Southern Lord Records, that bands like Sun are on, and Goat Snake, and I mean, it's just like that was a label that has like a lot of doom metal and stoner metal bands as well.
Yeah, hit me up with some of those on my Twitter DM. Just send me some of those band names. I'll add them to my rotation.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like Burning Witch, like the vocalist at times when he's just doing his regular singing, like his earlier stuff, kind of sounds like old Ozzy during Black Sabbath. But then he goes into like this miserable wail, and like the vocalist at the time, it was named Edgy 59, and I'm like, no one is as miserable as Edgy 59. So, but Burning Witch was definitely one of those bands like back in the day that had just crushing riffs, and then the guitarist from that, Stephen O'Malley, went on to form Sun, which is drone. I don't know how familiar you are with Sun, the band.
No, I'm not.
Oh, it's more experimental music, but like it's like a wall of sound. I've seen them before, and it was vibrating so loud that I had my body was vibrating up to mid chest. The only reason why I didn't get the full body experience is because two people were standing in front of me, dude. But the sound waves were just so powerful from that. Do you listen to Neurosis?
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah, dude, I'll be sending you a lot of stuff.
Just discovered The Sword.
Oh yes, I have like their first album.
Yeah, there's the album I was listening to was Warp Riders, and it's right in there with my like. There's something about it, like I play this kind of music like when I'm driving somewhere or when I'm playing a game where I'm driving somewhere functionally. Like, it's good road music, like there's something
excellent.
about it.
For sure.
But yeah, Warp Riders, it definitely made the rotation a couple times while I was playing Elite Dangerous.
I mean, are you familiar with Ty Segall?
No.
Okay, he would. I think he would be up your alley too. But sometimes he dives into psychedelic type music too. But
right on.
He's just a good musician. I forgot the name of his main band, but I think it's Fuzz.
Okay.
But but that's just me. I'm just that music nerd that just dives into a lot of stuff. But I'll definitely be sharing stuff with you. So you mentioned that you saw Sleep recently. Bucket list bands that you would like to see.
Oh man, see, I have trepidations about saying this because the last couple times I've been like, hey, I need to catch this band or this artist when they come to town next because they're getting old, and then they died before they got a chance to. So like, I never got to see Motorhead. I really want to see Motorhead, and I was like, told my wife, I was like, hey, next time Motorhead comes to town, we should go. And she was like, yeah. And then like Lemmy died like 2 weeks later. Same with Tom Petty. And like Soundgarden. So just like, come on, man. I will say, while I was in Jakarta, I got to see Sonic Youth, the Foo Fighters, and the Beastie Boys played a show. And that right there, a lot of concerts have had a hard time living up to that one. It was so perfect. Like, I even like to be, to full disclosure, I was one of the only non-Indonesian people in the audience. Like, there were several non-Indonesian people, but there were a few dozen as opposed to several hundred to thousands. And so it gave me a bit of a head up because I could speak English fluently and was at the front of the crowd. And so I was able to yell up to Mike D in between songs and yell at, "Hey, Mike D, play Tough Guy," which is one of my favorite Beastie Boys songs. Because a lot of people think that Beastie Boys are just rappers, and that's where they got the majority of their renown from. But they started off as like a hardcore punk band. And they continued to release hardcore music throughout their career. They just focused mostly on hip hop. And Tough Guy is one of those hardcore songs. And I yelled that out to Mike D. Mike D looked down at me, made eye contact, and then brought the microphone up to his lips. He's like, "All right, this next one's a little song called Tough Guy." And I just lost my shit. That is like the crunkest I've ever gotten in a pit. I was 14, just going nuts. It was amazing. But yeah, other bands I'd like to see, bucket list style. I saw AC/DC not too long ago, so that knocked that one off the list. I never got to see the Ramones. That one burns inside. But to be fair, by the time I actually was aware of who they were was when they retired. So that's no good. I don't know. I'd like to see The Damned. I haven't gotten to see them.
My only exposure to The Damned was from that old British show, The Young Ones, when they made an appearance on that.
Yeah, The Young Ones. That's bad. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's another topic because British comedy. I'm a big fan because I had that Australian broadcast while living in Indonesia. I watched a lot of British television.
No, dude, if you want to talk about it, go for it. I'm not going to cut you off.
Yeah, like I said, my dad and mom, we had watched Monty Python and stuff before going overseas. And they also, they enjoyed Faulty Towers and To the Manor Born and some other stuff. But I started catching a lot of shows, and not even all comedy. Like one was a game show, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was the Crystal Maze.
I'm not familiar. Right? I'm not familiar with that.
Well, let me. Yeah, the Crystal Maze. That show was awesome. It was like one of the Nickelodeon game shows, but for adults.
Okay.
Like, it was so cool. Like they would have they had like I think 6 different like regions that they would go to. So like they'd go to like the medieval region, and so everything is stone stone masonry, and there's crests and suits of armor and all that stuff around, and all the challenges. Like you would go into a room, you would send one of your teammates into a room, and they would have to like figure out this puzzle in order to get this like crystal ball, the little like slightly larger than a ping pong ball. And like that would be how they would get out of the room, was they'd use the crystal ball, and the crystal ball would, at the end, once they'd gone through all the levels, however many crystal balls they had, would be like how much time that they got to spend in basically like one of those air rooms that flashes money all over the place.
Okay.
It was an awesome show, and especially for a 12, 13-year-old to watch, like, because it was what was the Nickelodeon show with the aggro crag? Do you know?
Oh, dude. That's just. Oh man.
Or is that a different story altogether?
No.
Legend of the Forbidden Temple.
Was it Double Dare?
Double Dare, like Double Dare is definitely like along the right lines. Like it's definitely the like concept.
I don't know, dude. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, damn me for getting old. Right? My Alzheimer's is kicking in. But yes, totally. All those shows from back in the day. Oh, it's all.
Yeah, it was a cool show. You would go in and you'd have to, like figure out this like water trap in the like jungle level. And like, once you figure that out, you like raise the water level in this like little part with a dam, and then you'd have to lower it before this part filled up too much, and you'd have to get the water levels evened out, and then it would bring the crystal ball down to where you could grab it. But you had like a minute and a half to do it, or you had 60 seconds to do it. And if you didn't do it within that time, or you didn't abandon it and leave within that time, you got locked in the room for the rest of the show. And so like you would then start losing team members. And so like, but you could spend a crystal ball to get somebody out of the locked room. So like you would have to do the math of like, okay, do we want more hands grabbing stuff when we're in the cash, air room where cash is flying all over the place because of fans below us? Or do we want to save up our crystal balls so we have more time in that room, but we lose out on having Ted because Ted messed up the water trap level? So it was really interesting seeing like the dynamics that worked between the teams, like when you'd have somebody who was like not that good of a leader versus somebody who like had a pretty good idea of who was capable of what. It was a really good show. I highly recommend it. I've seen it on YouTube since.
Okay,
So
I'll have to look that up. I'll have to look that up for sure. But you said you like the young ones.
Yeah, the young ones. Let's see, what else? I'm a huge fan of Matt Berry. He's not, Young Ones is older. That's 80s. Matt Berry is more contemporary, but the IT Crowd was fantastic. He was on that. Father Ted was great. There's so many shows I can't even like begin to remember how many different shows I've watched. And there's so many shows because the BBC and most of the Commonwealth broadcasting corporations have a very different approach to television than America. A show gets greenlit in America, and you're usually doing 12 to 24 episodes. And then, you take a break, and then you come back the next year if you get renewed, and you do another 12 to 24 episodes generally. In the BBC and the other Commonwealth corporations, you get greenlit for 6 episodes. And then a lot of times that's it for a show. So in the BBC comedies and stuff, you have to go for broke in the first episode because you only have so much time to introduce your characters and provide funny situations for them to be in before all of a sudden the series is over. So a lot of American comedies can take more time building the world that the story takes place in, fleshing out the characters with more backstory and stuff, whereas basically episode 1 of British comedy show, you learn who the characters are, what makes them tick within the first few minutes, and then you're watching them get thrust into a situation that makes for hilarity. It's a really interesting system. So it has much more, like I said, more of a go for broke feel to it because you got to just throw everything you got out there because this could be your only shot. And so yeah, there's something really fascinating about that, but it also means that because you only have 6 episodes to a series, that means there's just thousands of series out there that only got one run, and so like there's a bunch that I'm never going to see. Also watching on HBO, there was the Ricky Gervais show, which was Ricky Gervais, Stephen Merchant, and Carl Pilkington animated, and that was a hilarious show, which led me to their old radio show that they used to have. There's on YouTube, you can find it, the Ricky Gervais show on XFM. There's, I don't know, 70 episodes of those guys sitting around talking about a bunch of the same stuff they end up talking about on the HBO series. But there's a whole lot more wealth there. And it's just hearing them talk about things and like recognizing that there's so much commonality between England and America, and then so many vastly different things. Points of reference, context about certain ideas and phrases. Like, for instance, the word fanny. The word fanny in America means your butt. So a fanny pack is that thing that rides on your butt around your waist. Fanny means a woman's private parts in British English. So you can't really say fanny pack over there because it kind of is weird. And again, sorry, I just went off on a whole tangent.
No, dude, it's all good, man. I mean, like, yeah. Wrap it up, Tyson. Wrap it up. I've got things to do today, sir. Like, edit this interview to put up at some point. No, it's all good, dude. I mean, like I said, I've never wanted to stop my guest when they're just talking about things. I love doing conversations. I mean, you know me by now, so that's how I do things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Keep it fresh. Keep it natural.
I mean, for sure. I mean, it could have been like, ask you the questions that you hate being asked, but I'm not going to do that.
What was it like voicing Bobby in Full Metal Alchemist? I knocked on a pipe and went, that's what it was like.
Dude, I will say this. As far as like still on the topic of British comedies, I proudly own the entire Mr. Bean collection because I used to watch that from back in the day. And I got it. I bought that in at an anime convention during a garage sale. I was like, really? Mr. Bean? For $10, the whole series? Oh yeah, we're doing this right now. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Mr. Bean was also one of those that we got introduced to when living overseas, and that was something that the whole family just really loved. We all got thoroughly into Mr. Bean. I even had the Mr. Bean book.
Oh, really?
Came out, it was like his diary for a year, and it was really funny and very stupid and messed up.
Did it actually have words in the diary?
Oh yeah, no, it was Mr. Bean writing down his thoughts and stuff.
Okay, because he's usually like, brr, 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 so right. It's like if that's a book just full of that is
right. Well, and that's what part of what made it really interesting is that part of what makes Mr. Bean so great is that it's so much situational and physical comedy as opposed to words. So it's something that can be shown in several situations in different languages and cultures, and you don't really have to really translate anything, because for the most part that's not the important aspect, is what the words are. The important aspect is he's desperately trying to get out of this parking garage without paying for it. You don't need to know what is being said. You just need to watch him constantly do stuff that is just really dumb and dangerous.
Or change his clothes at the beach in front of a woman who coincidentally turns out to be blind by the time the whole thing's done.
Right. So he didn't have to go through all that trouble after all. Yeah, that's one of the most impressive feats of physicality I've ever seen is Rowan Atkinson changing into a swimsuit in broad daylight without ever showing any bit of his bits.
All right. Also, quick question before we go into the final topic of this interview. Back to Ricky Gervais. Did you ever see the interview that he did? I'm doing an interview with quotation marks. The interview that he did with Jiminy Glick when they brought back Jiminy Glick briefly.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Are you familiar with Jiminy Glick?
Oh yeah. Martin Short's Jiminy Glick show. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. That was like recorded within the last few years. I would definitely suggest looking that up because Ricky is just like losing it, especially like when Jiminy had introduced. He's like, I'm sitting here with a man from The Office. I'm talking with Steve Carell, and Ricky just loses it, and it's a hilarious interview.
Awesome. Well, I just Googled it, so I will watch it later.
So I definitely want to go into the final topic of this interview. Your band Bullet Machine.
Yeah.
So why was Champ Fest one of the best shows that you've played? Because I watched the entire set.
Oh man. Well, first off, it was the day. So we had it was a festival that was supposed to have, 30 different bands play, something like that. A whole bunch of bands supposed to play in one day. And granted, it's pretty much all punk bands, so everybody's going to play 15, 20 minutes, and that's it. But there was supposed to be, I think, 2 different stages, but it started raining that day, so it all got smushed down to one stage. And, everybody's just slogging through mud everywhere. It was kind of like a punk rock Woodstock. There's mud everywhere. People are, walking over to the nearby CVS to buy beer and go to the bathroom. It was a lot of fun. It was just everybody cutting loose once everybody got over the fact that it was rainy. And just, it was awesome. The energy was fantastic. We ended up going on hours after our scheduled time, but it was an ideal time to go on because there was a lot of people there who were energized and ready to rock and roll. Just the feedback that the crowd gave us, the situation, everything about it just created this really palpable energy. And we I think we played accordingly. We really felt it and brought it. I got smashed in the mouth with my microphone at one point. Had to like double check and make sure I still had all my teeth. I did. I still have all my teeth. The top right incisor ached for about a week and a half after that, but then it went away. I was like, okay, so are you just dead instead of knocked out? And no, it's fine. He just got a little bashing. But yeah, I don't know, man. It was perfect. Like just this perfect storm of like anticipation and excitement and like I said, I feel that the weather had a great deal to do with it. Like something about it just made it even more visceral. It was fantastic. And we played in a mechanic's garage because the stages that we had set up for the show for the festival were all like waterlogged and just absolutely destroyed by the rain. So we had to make do. And it was really funny because earlier in the day, the garage that we were in, on one side was a garage where they were painting a car. So there's like paint fumes coming over from one side. And then, there's guys actively like changing carburetors and stuff in the garage on the other side. So it was a weird, awesome experience. It was a whole lot of fun. But yeah, I don't know what it was that made it that way, but I think it was just like that gestalt of all these like elements coming together to make something more than what they should have been. And it was a lot of fun. And yeah, it's one of our better live recordings in our opinion.
I mean, it totally reminded me of a house show because I used to be part of the DIY punk scene back in the day in Grand Rapids. I mean, we actually used to have these annual shows, the big show called Michigan Meltdown. And the dude who was booking like all the bands, he would bring in all these punk bands from all over the states, and sometimes he would bring in like touring bands from other countries too.
Right.
I saw like these 4 Japanese women for this band called Mind of Asian, and they destroyed. I saw this grindcore band from Japan called Bathtub Shitter, and they destroyed. I mean, when I watched that, dude, like I said, that brought me back, and it was pretty cool. I mean, I'm like so old that I barely go to shows now, but I used to go to shows like on a weekly basis back in the day.
I'm right there with you, dude. Like if it's not a show I'm supposed to play, odds are I'm not going, and that's really bad, and I feel like an ass for it. But I'm a married man, and my knees hurt. I get tired, like I'm getting old. There's only so much I can do. I still need to go out and do more than I currently do, but yeah, no, I let myself be too lazy sometimes. But yeah, no, there's so many great bands, especially internationally. Like talking about Japanese punk bands, like for the listeners who might be interested, there's a really good band called Husking Bee.
Okay.
And then another one called Mock Pelican, MACH Pelican. And Mock Pelican's a really interesting story. From what I gather, they were some dudes from Japan who I think met in Australia, where they were like doing like a foreign exchange kind of thing, where it was basically like they went to Australia to like learn how to speak English functionally. And apparently while they were there, they put together a band, and like they have like, they're really poppy, but they're awesome. Like they're very Ramones poppy awesomeness. And I highly suggest checking them out. They're really cool.
Excellent, dude. I definitely will look that up because I'm always on the search for new music.
Totally.
But let's talk about the 3 albums you released since the last time I talked to you one-on-one. Jinkies, It's Bullet Machine, Single Car Sessions, and your latest album that just came out less than 2 weeks ago, or
yes,
Knuckle Supper.
Yes.
So Jinkies, It's Bullet Machine.
Jinkies, It's Bullet Machine. That was when Chris George, aka Chubbs, was our lead guitarist. He is a director up at Funimation, for those who aren't aware. He's currently working on Hinomaru Sumo, which I'm in. He's also working on Black Clover, and he did the Steins Gate 0 season. So for those who need to know, that's that. We put together, what is it? I can't remember how many songs. We went out to Aqualab Studios, which is in Deep Ellum, Deep Ellum is kind of the live music area in Dallas. That's where we generally end up playing, is at some bar down there, preferably Three Links, which is where we had our album release party and also where I got married. And so, we went to Aqualab and we worked on that. That was one where generally the bassist Rob and I are the songwriters, and we generally try to keep it kind of half and half. And usually we keep it to where I sing the songs that I wrote, but every once in a while we change it up. And on Jinkies, it's Bullet Machine. Or no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Red Shirt Revenge. I wrote an instrumental song, and that's actually Red Shirt Revenge is one of the few albums that has a song written by somebody other than me or Rob. Chubbs wrote the song Tribbles on Red Shirt Revenge.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Jinkies is Bullet Machine. It's got some of our favorites. We pretty much always open up a lot of our shows, or open up like the second batch of songs. Like we kind of like, we generally try to do it the way kind of the Ramones did, where you'd have like a bracket of like 3 to 6 songs, and you slam through those songs, and you take a little break, say hi to the audience, retune, yada 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 yada, and then play another bracket of like 4 songs or whatever. And that's generally how we do it. But a lot of times we'll either start the show or start the next bracket of songs with "Can You Dig It," which generally often leads into "Savage Streets," which are both on Jinkies' Bullet Machine and in that order. So we put it in that order for that reason, because we generally follow "Can You Dig It" with "Savage Streets." Once again, pretty much all the songs are either about B movies or B movies that we wish were a thing. So "Can You Dig It" is actually about the Warriors.
That iconic scene.
Yep, absolutely. And we sample that clip of him asking if anyone in the audience can truly dig it. Savage Streets is The Exorcist, Linda Blair. It's a Linda Blair revenge pick, and it's very interesting. It's there's a crossbow involved, and so I highly recommend watching that. It's pretty cool. But yeah, it's let's see, 90 Seconds of Your Life. That one's not quite as B movie. That one's about Point Break. So that's actually that's a A-list movie. That was a blockbuster release back in 1990 or whatever. But it's still a pretty ridiculous, awesome movie anyway. And if you don't believe me, there is a scene where Keanu Reeves is chasing Patrick Swayze, and they're running through like all these different houses, jumping in people's windows, running out their porch, etc. And at one point, they run through a yard that has a dog, and it's barking at Patrick Swayze, and it lunges at him, and he just like grabs it in midair and like hurls it at Keanu Reeves, who's following him. It's just one of those moments where you're like, okay, that's obviously a stuffed toy, like, it's a lot of fun. It's a cool movie. I highly recommend watching the original Point Break. I do not recommend watching the new Point Break. The trailer I saw for it made me angry, and by new I mean that thing's like 4 or 5 years old now. But yeah, the original is definitely where to go with that.
I guess the fire still burns then.
Oh yeah. Just the trailer made me so angry. Like the trailer made me so angry. I get a lot more crunk about movies and stuff now than I did when I was younger. But I think that's part of being a crotchety old man.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
You're not completely at that point yet. We're both in the same age group. So.
Yeah. But you were also talking about how you're like, I'm old, I don't go to shows anymore.
Well, because I don't go to shows so much because usually like they're happening while like I'm at a convention or I'm at work.
Right.
Because
I'm working.
I mean, like, or like I just don't know about them. I'm not keeping my finger on the pulse like I used to, and that's why like when I brought up MagFest earlier, I was like, oh wow, I get to see 15 bands over the span of this weekend.
Nice.
Excellent. So this is at least me getting some of my love for music, all in one place. But and
Yeah.
also like there hasn't really been like a whole bunch of bands that have came through that I've been interested in seeing, because like in Michigan, especially Grand Rapids, we get squat, dude, because bands have to travel up into the state and they go back down because they can't really travel to anywhere else. I mean, it sucks. I mean, like one of my bucket list bands that I did get to see last year was the Smashing Pumpkins. They did a 3-hour set, 30 songs, and all of it was, except for like, all of it was their old stuff before the first breakup, and they had like a few cover songs too. So I could check that off the list. It was definitely worth the price of the nosebleed seats that I got. But I would agree, it sucks not being able to go to shows as much as I used to, because I used to live for that. Like every weekend, I would be at a different show.
Yeah, that's what I lived for. It was to go to see a new show. But yeah, it will also, not having as much disposable income is another thing where, like, when I was going out to see shows and stuff, I was, I either had roommates or I was, living at home or whatever, back when I was even younger. And so, I didn't have to worry about, rent, or rent wasn't quite as high as it is now, so there was a lot of extra money that I could spend on going to see shows and make sure to buy merchandise from touring bands. Because most of the music I listen to is they're playing shows for like 50 people, and so like everybody who buys a T-shirt, that's a big deal. Like it's that T-shirt means they're getting another 50 miles down the road or whatever. Whereas you go to like Metallica and buy a T-shirt, that just means you're getting like Lars Ulrich at like 7th Sea-Doo for his beach house.
No, dude. I mean, I totally understand. And another reason why I don't go to so many shows now is like, the ones that do come here and I look at it, I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm not dropping that much to go see that band. I'm good.
Totally. Yeah. No, there was. I think it was Morrissey or something came through town, and I was like, yeah, I'd like to go check that out. That sounds pretty cool. And then like tickets were like $140. I was like, I don't like Morrissey that much.
Oh God, no, dude. Like, when I saw AC/DC open up their world tour in Grand Rapids, like, well over a decade ago, it was $45 for, like, an upper balcony seat. I don't think tickets were more than $100. And this was, like, AC/DC. So, like, $45, that's a fair price. But, like, that today, there's no way I would spend, I probably would spend $65 total to go see one of those national touring, the mainstream bands.
Totally.
I can't do any more than that, because like no band in my opinion is worth paying that much money to go see. It's just, you can call me cheap, you can call me frugal, I don't care, that's fine.
So
so
I'm pretty much right there with you, man. I feel very much the same way.
So you were talking Single Car. I mean, I just wanted to make a note. So, Single Car Sessions actually seemed like a retrospective album because you had interviews woven into it.
Yeah, it was a thing where we went to. There's a band in town called the Delzells, and Justin with the Delzells put together the Single Car Sessions, where he gets some of the local bands to come in, play some songs, talk about the bands and the history and where what they're planning and everything. And so it was really interesting. It was laid back. We got to get in. That was one of the first things that Phipps, who was the guitarist on Initiate Plan Z, he came back to the band after Chubbs had to retire, and is still our current lead guitarist. And so that was, I think, one of the first things that he did in his return, was working on that. We also ended up working on some like basically demo recordings at Aqualab to just kind of like get an idea of what we wanted to do with some songs and where we wanted to go. Like, sometimes recording the music and listening back to it kind of helps you with even rewriting the song, being like, actually, it doesn't work doing it this many times, or actually, I think we could repeat that stanza again, and I think it would stand up really well. So we did a demo recording at Aqualab for some of the tracks that we ended up going on Knuckle Supper. And yeah, the Single Car Sessions was a lot of fun. We just grabbed like a suitcase of beer and went over to Justin's house and got into a studio and recorded and just did the songs, and then Rob and I sat down and talked about Bullet Machine and where we came from and where we're going and all that stuff. The kind of conversation that you are really that a lot of young men are dreadful of hearing they're going to have with their significant other. You know, and so yeah, it was a lot of fun, and like you said, it was kind of a retrospective kind of thing because we're playing songs that had already been recorded before, and just kind of testing them out, giving them a new life, and it's quasi live because we're well, I mean it's a live recording. It's us playing all together, as opposed to individual instruments for like most of the album recordings we've done. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was a good experience, and it was nice to kind of mix a behind the music into it as well. And then we spent the next long while putting together, getting songs written for our most recent release, Knuckle Supper. And yeah, this one was a long time coming. We did 10 songs on this album, and we really feel we had more. We had, I think, 11, but we ended up dropping it because we didn't want it. We wanted all killer, no filler. And so we dropped a song that just wasn't really up to snuff compared to the rest. And it was we've been working on these songs for months, some of them even years, before going into the studio to record them. And part of the reason why is because we went to Blasting Room Studios in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is owned by Bill Stevenson. Bill Stevenson is the longtime drummer for The Descendants and All. And so many awesome bands have recorded there. Teenage Bottle Rocket, the Lillingtons, I believe Against Me, obviously Descendants, All. I think there was some Lagwagon in there. There's all sorts. I have a bunch of pictures of the premises, and yeah, just some of the greatest albums in punk history were recorded at Blasting Room. And so we got to work with Andrew Berlin as our producer. He has worked on countless awesome albums. One in particular, the Lillingtons' most recent album, Stella Sapiente, which is just fantastic. I'm a huge Lillingtons fan. We got to open for them last year when they were coming through to promote the new album. And opening for them was one of those bucket list items that I got to check off. In fact, it's now, as far as like musically bands I want to play with, or open for, etc. There's very few that are possible even at this point. And very few, and even more that are improbable. But that was the one that I was like, this is one of my favorite bands of all time, and I got to open for them. They got to hear my music, and I got to see them live. And I got to see them live without paying for it. Hooray! But yeah, it was a absolute awesome experience. It was I can't be there are very few things would be able to compare to the joy I felt playing that show, because there's no way I can open for the Ramones. Almost all the Ramones are dead now. And I can't open for the Riverdales because I don't think the two guys who write all the music for Riverdales are even on speaking terms anymore. So it's whittled down significantly the bands that I love the most and could play with that are still playing. So yeah, Lillingtons was one of those top notches. The Queers was another. I got to open for them a year or so before the Lillingtons. And I actually recorded with my old band, the Tommy Guns. I recorded an album with Joe Queer out at I think it was Loud and Clear Studios in Paducah, Kentucky. And he recognized me at the show where we played with the Bullet Machine, and he was like, "Wait, is this the same band you came out with?" I was like, "Oh no, that band's long dead." And so yeah, but yeah, Knuckle Supper. We really try to bring our A game. We went and recorded somewhere. We spent 10 days in Colorado. Not all of those were recording. I'd say I think the first 4 or so days were recording. The first day was just getting there and unwinding from 16 hours in the car. And we recorded 3 or 4 days after that, and then it was mixing and listening to the mix and making notes on where a snare needed to come up and where, lead guitar needed to go down, and etc. And yeah, we just, at that point, once I had recorded the vocals and the guitar and everything, I didn't do too much with the post aspects. Our drummer Matt is a decent engineer in his own right, and he has a good ear and has been in a lot of bands over the years. And so he kind of took the helm for the band on that, sitting in with Andrew and making sure that things worked the way we needed them to. One of the few things that I had input on as far as that was concerned was we had to add a reverse crash cymbal sound effect to the song Too Many Godzillas. And that was definitely one that I fought for. It was like, that's something we need. Most good albums have a reverse crash at some point on them. We just need to go overboard with it. And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun singing songs about Too Many Godzillas and ninjas who use dirty tricks to win martial arts tournaments and the like.
Oh, no. Yeah, for sure. I mean, because of your album, I recently watched that movie, 5 Elements Ninjas. And I like the fact that for a movie that's like hour and 42 minutes, like the first hour and 20 minutes is of that school getting destroyed by these ninjas, and then the last 20 minutes are like, oh, we'll learn ninjutsu real quick and then mop the floor with them. I'm like, what?
Which is the 5 Elements Ninjas was back in the day with a lot of, especially like Hong Kong martial arts cinema, but also with a lot of the exploitation films in the 70s and stuff. A lot of movies that came out at that time would get multiple releases. And so sometimes they would get released like, this isn't what happened. I'm just kind of spitballing to give you an idea of the kind of stuff that would happen. So like 5 Elements Ninjas. Let's say that it gets a license to be distributed to these 20 theaters in the United States in 1978. And so they distribute it to those 20 theaters in 1978, and then the run of it ends, and then it goes away. And then they're like, you know what? We didn't, there's whole swaths of the Midwest that didn't get to see this. So let's send it to these other 20 unaffiliated theaters and let them show it. But we can't send it out as 5 Elements Ninjas anymore because that name's already out there. That show's already, come and gone or whatever. This isn't supposed to be a retrospective. So they would then retitle the movie. And so then they called it Chinese Super Ninjas. So in the song, we refer to the 5 Element Ninjas, and then we refer to Chinese Super Ninjas as well. And that's because those were 2 working titles for the same movie. And it's not as ignorantly racist as you might think, because the Kung Fu warrior who wants to avenge his school learns ninjutsu and becomes a superior ninja to the other ninjas, and he is Chinese, therefore he is a Chinese super ninja. I'm like, there is some gymnastics you have to do to make it make sense, but it is out there. But back in the 80s, people didn't know, ninjas were a Japanese thing. They didn't know Kung Fu was a Chinese thing. They just assumed anybody from that part of the world, it was the same thing. And that was a major problem with Hollywood, and it probably still is today, just not as blatantly. But yeah, another movie, the original Inglorious Bastards from 1979 or wherever it was from,
with Fred Williamson.
Yes, with Fred Williamson, good man. It had a different release, a home video release. The first time I saw the movie, I found at Blockbuster Video on VHS. I sound like 10,000 years old. On Blockbuster Video on VHS. We would do a thing where I saw Mystery Science Theater a long time ago, and it just kind of clicked with me. So we used to, in high school, rent the schlocky looking horror movies and sci-fis and all that, and just make fun of them. And so I saw a movie called G.I. Bro, and it was Fred Williamson with a Tommy gun on the cover, and it was said, "If you're a Kraut, he'll take you out." And I was like, sweet, awesome, blaxploitation World War II movie, let's do this. And it ended up, it was the same movie as Inglorious Bastards. It was just labeled differently for a different release methodology. So I don't know if there was licensing issues with the original Inglorious Bastards and somebody else had VHS rights to it. So somebody was like, well, screw it. I'm releasing it as G.I. Bro. It's the same movie, but we called it something else. And that happened with Grindhouse cinema, like all over the place. A lot of movies from that time period and of that genre have 2, 3, sometimes even like 4 or 5 different working names that they were known as to different people based on whether it was a theatrical release or a video release or a Laserdisc release, or who knows what, who owns the rights to the VHS, but you don't own the rights to the theatrical, yada yada. There's so much nonsense involved in all that stuff, and property rights, which is not nonsense because I'm a creator and I want to get credited for my work as well. I get it, but it gets confusing.
No, for sure. No, dude. I mean, I would definitely at some point love to have you back on, because there's like so much more that I had to cut out of this interview that I definitely wanted to talk to you about, especially like going full ham onto B movies, because we touched upon it a little bit the last time we had talked. But I certainly would love to have you on.
That'd be an entire episode to in and of itself, is us just talking about B movies.
No, yeah, for sure, dude. Because I will go full ham on that all day, every day.
I'm right there, brother.
No, I mean, I definitely, you've been super generous with your time, and I don't want to keep you any longer. But I definitely wanted to go into the last 3 questions for this interview. But I definitely must note I would love to have you on again, dude, because I have so much here in front of me that I definitely wanted to cover with you. So please come back.
We will do this again.
Oh, thank you, dude. I totally appreciate that. So last 3 questions, just like last time. What's new that you could talk about, that you would like to promote, and that you're allowed to talk about?
Okay, so right now I am one of the main characters in Hinomaru Sumo. I play Ozeki. He's the captain of the sumo team at Dachi High. He's the guy who puts the whole crew together, even though the show is about a different guy named Hinomaru. He's still a key player. It's a lot of fun playing him too, because it's different than a lot of the characters I normally play. I went higher in my register than one might expect from a big boy like Ozeki, because he's really timid and kind of nervous and shy and all that. So I was playing kind of counter to a lot of the roles I generally play. A lot of times I played the giants, the big loud guys, and this time Chubbs wanted me to pull it in, be more subdued and subtle, and so it's a lot of fun. It's a different performance than I normally get, and I've enjoyed working on that, so please check that out. It's a sports anime, and a lot of people have opinions about sports anime, but it's an excellent show. It's got a lot of heart. Marcus Stimick is in it, and he's just genius. Marcus is one of my favorite fellow actors. He is a just really interesting human being, for one, and a very talented, capable actor. And he does a great job in it. And then, of course, as you mentioned, there's Backstreet Girls, Gokudolls on Netflix, which I wrote half the show, mostly the evens, and then it kind of switches up near the end. I think I was like 2, 4, 6, and then 7, 9 or something like that. I can't remember. But I definitely wrote the hemorrhoid episode.
Highly recommended.
I did not write the hip hop episode, but know that the hip hop episode, just in Japanese, made me laugh until I was crying. So I imagine, that the English version, it's going to kick it up a further notch. And then also I worked on Sirius the Jaeger, which is also on Netflix recently. And that's a really cool show. It's like 1920s vampires and vampire hunters. It's really interesting. It's very cool.
Okay.
Got a lot of style to it. I wrote episodes 1, 2, 7, and 8. And that was a lot of fun. That was the first show I worked on for Bang Zoom Entertainment. So I've got 2 shows on Netflix so far that I've worked on. There's another one I can't talk about that's coming on its way, but I'll let you know when I can. And it's really exciting. It's a cool little show, really cute. Very much outside of my normal writing wheelhouse as well.
All right. Excellent. I'll definitely look out for, you said Sirius the Jaeger?
Yeah, Sirius the Jaeger. Sirius.
Oh, like Harry Potter.
Yes.
All right.
And also, I'm in that time I got reincarnated as a slime. I am Ranga, the Tempest Wolf, and I am a good boy.
So if people wanted to find you online, where could they go?
On Twitter, I go by the handle Attack on Tyson. And then I have Tyson Rinehart, voice actor, on Facebook.
All right. And final... go ahead.
You can find Bullet Machine on Bandcamp, on Spotify, and I believe on iTunes.
Oh, I'll certainly include that in the link for the description. For
Oh,
sure.
sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, dude. I like your music, so I'll totally support it.
We got one. All right.
I wouldn't bring it up in conversation if I didn't like your music. I'm like, oh yeah, he does a band. They do cool stuff, I guess.
I guess.
You know. And final question: what would you like to say to all your fans throughout the years?
Thank you for putting up with me. Sometimes that can be a bit much. And I am trying every day to be a kinder, gentler Tyson, and while still being funny and acerbic enough. I watched the Will You Be My Neighbor Fred Rogers documentary the other day, and I was like, a lot of my interactions with some people who are haters hasn't been the kind of thing that Fred Rogers would have wanted me to be. I wasn't being the man that Mr. Rogers knew I could be. And so I kind of got a little pensive and, melancholy about it, being like, maybe I should try to be. But, the whole thing with prison school and the other stuff, I'm like, sometimes people just need to be put in their place. So I don't know. I'm dancing that line of being witty and acerbic, and also recognizing that I'm going to have a son in a month and a half, and I should probably work on being more patient and understanding. So I'm dancing that line. So if ever before I have been short with you, I'm sorry. If I have been awesome with you, expect more of it to come.
Most excellent, dude, and congratulations on the upcoming kid.
Thank you so much. We're super excited and absolutely terrified.
Well, isn't that how it should be?
Yeah, exactly. I hear that's a common trait with expectant parents.
I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand,
Yeah.
Just wait till your kid gets in the teenage years, and he's like, "I don't have to listen to you, Dad. I'm a grown up. I can live my own life."
I've already started a collection of more dad clothes, fishing button-up T-shirts that have the breathable panel in the back. I'm going to try to wear more of those and fewer of my, Screeching Weasel T-shirts, so that maybe my kid will think I'm a square, and then when he's a teenager and wants to rebel, he'll listen to good music. And I'll be like, "Oh, turn that crap off! It's so loud!" Mer.
Are you going to be like reverse psychology? You're going to try driving your kid to a Screeching Weasel?
Yeah, just being like, "I don't know what you see in these guys." Meanwhile, I'm buying a ticket and hanging out in the back.
Well, Tyson, thank you so much for granting me this. Now you're technically my longest interview ever. You beat out my friend Kyle, aka K Murdoch, who's a music producer. You've beaten him out now for longest interview on My Geek Scene. So congratulations to you, sir.
Oh, my pleasure entirely, and salutations and commiserations to Mr. Murdoch. I'm sorry to have taken your title.
Oh, well, he and I will be doing another interview, so, because he and I like to talk, so we might be just crushing this as far as time goes, but who knows? But, dude, thank you so much for doing another interview with me. Like I said, I will certainly have you back on for sure. So, folks, this is Joe from My Geek Scene with Tyson Rinehart. Take it easy.
Thanks, Joe. Take care. Bye, guys.